Good morning, one and all. Without any further ado, our obeisances to our disciplic session. Om Aganati Marandasya Ganagana Sadaka Chaksurun Miritam Yena Tajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Swayam Rupakaramayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parikamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shri Vishakan Vitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutade Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Sarasati Deva Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sanyvari Prasketa De Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ram 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 Hari Hari Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tito Jayo Dhiratnashta Prayasho Bhadresu Nityam Bhagata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Krishna Swadam Upagate Dharmagam Dahisha Karona Stadrishamasha Paran. Is everybody still there? There might have been a brief disconnect there. So I have to make sure that I don't go on cellular because where we are here we don't get good cellular, but the Wi-Fi is pretty good with a Comcast connection. Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday. Thomas, Sundari Priya, Govinda, Rupa Manjari, Joe, Anjali. Welcome, one and all. And I can see the fireworks are already going off, so you guys are so good. I don't even have to hint at it anymore. Well, our verse is so meaningful, and there's so much to say about it that we're going to spend another day. Yes. All right. Nothing more inspirational to yours truly than to see all the fireworks going off there. And I haven't even started yet, so how great is that? Maybe even as we talk, Facebook is pushing us out there, even before our class has gotten started. Any case, part 2 of 28th verse, 2nd chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Vasudeva Para Veda, Vasudeva Para Maga, Vasudeva Para Yoga, Vasudeva Para Kriya, Vasudeva Param Gyanam, Vasudeva Param Tapa, Vasudeva Param Dharma, Vasudeva Para Gatim. There's another verse in the Bhagavatam that is exactly the same, except it's Narayan. So it's Narayana Para Veda, Narayana Para Maga, Narayana Para Yoga, Narayana Para Kriya, Narayana Para Gyanam, Narayana Param Tapa, Narayana Para Dharma, Narayana Para Gatim. So if you were wondering yesterday why I had the same sort of reply to all of your comments, it said Narayana Para Para, it's because I forgot that we were on the Vasudeva version of it, and I was remembering the Narayan version of it. So that's why I was commenting back to each and every one of you, Narayana Para Veda. But there is a verse with Narayana substitute for Vasudeva, and after all, Narayan and Vasudeva are synonyms. They're the very same thing. So the meaning, the translation, in the revealed scriptures, Narayana Para Veda, Vasudeva Para Veda, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna. The purpose of performing sacrifice, Narayana Para Yagya, Vasudeva Para Yagya, is to please him. Yoga is meant for realizing him, Narayana Para Yoga, Vasudeva Para Yoga, and so on. You get the idea. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only, that's Kriya. He is supreme knowledge, that's Jnana. All severe austerities, that's Tapa, are performed to know him. Religion, Dharma, is rendering loving service to him. And the conclusion of all this is that Narayan or Vasudeva or Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the supreme goal of life. Yesterday we read the first paragraph of the purport, so today we're going to skip down to the second paragraph of Srila Prabhupada's purport. One may argue that the Vedic activities are based on sacrificial ceremonies. This is true, but all such sacrifices are meant for realizing the truth about Vasudeva. Another name of Vasudeva is yajna, or sacrifice. And in the Bhagavad Gita is clearly stated that all sacrifices and all activities are to be conducted for the satisfaction of yajna. That's 3rd chapter, 9th verse, Yagnartat Kamadon Yatra, or Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. This is the case also with the yoga systems. Again, Bhagavad Gita, yoginam api sarvesham madgatinantaratmanaha. Krishna says, I am the goal of all the yogas. They worship me with all their hearts. Yoga means to get in touch with the Supreme Lord. The process, however, includes several bodily features, such as asana, dhyana, pranayama, and meditation, and all of them are meant for concentrating on the localized aspect of Vasudeva, represented as Paramatma. Paramatma realization is but partial realization of Vasudeva, and if one is successful in that attempt, one comes to the point of realizing Vasudeva in full. But by ill luck, most yogis are stranded by the powers of mysticism achieved through the bodily process. Ill-fated yogis are given a chance in the next birth, tatatam buddhi sam yogam, by being placed in the families of good learned Brahmins or the families of rich merchants in order to execute the unfinished task of Vasudeva or Narayan realization. If such fortunate sons of Brahmins and rich men properly utilize the chance, they can easily realize Vasudeva or Narayan by good association with saintly persons. Unfortunately, such preferred persons are often captivated again by material wealth and honor, and thus they practically forget the aim of life. And just recapping some of the things we discussed yesterday, Prabhupada says the constitutional position, the nature of the living entity is that he is a fragmental part and parcel of God. However, although we're the same quality as God, God's spirit, and we're eternal, the difference is that he's all-powerful. There isn't any other energy which emanates from him which can cover him. Examples given that the power of the sun causes clouds. It evaporates water from reservoirs and they become clouds. And then that cloud, which was created by the sun, can obscure our vision of the sun. How many times have we said from our little tiny, minuscule position in time and space on earth, oh, the cloud is covering the sun today. That's not true. The sun is millions and millions of times bigger than the earth. What to speak of a little cloud? It can only cover a few square feet on the earth planet. So no, the cloud is not, nor has it ever, nor could it ever cover the sun. But that's from our limited perspective. Okay? Otherwise, the sun can never be covered by a cloud. The cloud is the energy that the sun created, and the energies can never cover the energetic source. But we can become covered by the illusion or the Maya or the external energy of the Lord. So the difference between ourselves and the Lord is that although we're qualitatively one, we can become conditioned by matter. We can become covered by the cloud of material creation, and God cannot. And when we become covered because of our desire to lord it over material creation, then we have to do work. We get these bodies, and these bodies are male or female, or they're by inclination or temperament. They're intellectual bodies or potentially Brahminical bodies, or we're very virile and vigorous and heroic and generous, and we have leadership qualities. So those are potentially warrior or Kshatriya bodies, or we like to buy and trade and sell and engage in merchandising and commerce. So that means we have the potential as a Vaishya or a mercantile or a banker, landowner, or we like to do arts and crafts or acting or trading. So that means we have the potential of a Sudra body. In other words, what I'm saying is that as soon as you get a body, then so many duties come with the body. You owe to the earth from which your body is created. You owe to your mother who created you the elements of your body in the womb. You owe to your father who impregnated you within the mother. You owe to the demigods who provide light and electricity and rainfall and sustenance for the body. You owe to the great saints and sages who set a great example of comportment and behavior. You owe to the scriptures which guide you and help you navigate through life. So as soon as you get a body, you get so many duties that you can never perform them all satisfactory in the time that you're given. What to speak of taking a human form in the Kali Yuga age when the lifespan is at most 100 years. The fact is that most of us only live to about 70 years, even though the potentially full lifespan in Kali Yuga is 100 years. They canceled it this year because of the pandemic, but usually there's a huge parade in Provo on the 4th of July, a patriotic freedom parade. And I remember one year, the Grand Marshal, the most honored person of the parade, who rode in a convertible Cadillac with American flags and the honor guard and escort and beauty queens around her, was a 106-year-old lady. And she achieved the exalted position of being the Grand Marshal of the parade for no other reason that I knew of. Reached 106 years old. So even though 100 years is the allotted lifespan in the Kali Yuga, very, very few people even come close to reaching that. Now we have so many, when we get contact with matter and we take a material body, which is the instrument, our means of enjoying, indulging our appetites and ambitions through God's separated energy, then there's so many duties that adhere to us. But Prabhupada says here in his report, even within the material world, and even doing your duties as a father and as a husband and as an employee and as a member of a certain country, as long as you have it in your mind, Narayana Paradharma, Narayana Parakriya. If you're a higher sort of a person, like a yogi or an ascetic or a philosopher, yes, you study the scriptures with the idea of discovering and serving Narayana. That's Narayana Paraveda. If you're a yogi, you discern the presence of the Lord, the Holy Ghost, the Paramatma, the Supersoul in the heart, and then you try to engage in his service, and that's Narayana Parayoga. But if you're like the mass of people who don't have the luxury of studying philosophy or doing austerities or doing yoga, then you're just doing work to maintain your body and your family. That's called Kriya. And hopefully you're doing it righteously. You're not earning your living or maintaining your family illegally. So that's called Dharma or Karma. But the fact that you're entangled in material, temporary, conditional affairs does not mean that you still cannot become Krishna conscious. Because the beauty of Krishna consciousness and chanting the holy names of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. The process of simply wherever you are, even in the factory, if you think of Krishna as your boss, Krishna is your supervisor, Krishna is your friend, Krishna is the ultimate owner of that factory, and Krishna is the beneficiary of your work, then you can become 100% Krishna consciousness. Even though from the material explanation, you don't have a very high, exalted, lofty position. Prabhupada says the beauty of the process of becoming Krishna consciousness, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered it, is it brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter. That means that no matter how involved you are in your work, in your vocation, in your career, in your family, in your country, still, if you catch fire, if you ignite with a fervor that in all of this, I'm going to keep God first place and honor him by chanting his holy names and taking only consecrated vegetarian foodstuff, then in all of there'll be an arousing of spiritual existence. Now, how is it that the simple process of chanting and taking prasadam can... I'm getting a message here that we're connecting and disconnecting, which shouldn't be because we have a very, very powerful internet connection from Comcast. But anyway, on we go. The Prabhupada said, it's because Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhana, it's our original and constitutional nature to be Krishna conscious. We are originally Krishna conscious living beings. And that's why no matter how many previous incarnations we've had, no matter how long we've been revolving in this material world in various species and going up and down amongst the various planetary systems, as soon as the light of Krishna consciousness comes in, all that conditioning gets negated, and we start to revive our original Krishna conscious. Imagine you had a childhood friend. Maybe you lived the first 5 years of your life on the East Coast, and then you moved to Utah, Back then you had a friend that you used to play with on the block, you'd skateboard together, get in trouble together. You haven't had any contact with that friend for 30 or 40 years, but one day you get a phone call and says, hey, this is Jack. Jack? Jack who? You know, Jack Smith from Cleveland. And then as you hear, the memory hadn't been lost. It was there, but you were otherwise engaged in Utah and Utah things and Utah responsibilities and Utah job and Utah taxes and Utah politics. So that old connection that you had with your childhood friend never got lost, but it got pushed down. It got weighted down by the immediate concerns that faced you over the last few decades. However, due to the sound vibration, when you began to hear through the phone, this is Jack Smith from Cleveland, and we live down the block, then that revives. Similarly, we do have a primeval, original, constitutional, eternal relationship with our Creator, with our Father, and that is all very powerfully and very relatively quickly aroused and revived by the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's why there are countless stories of people who were involved in raising a family, pursuing an occupation, ruling a kingdom, sweeping the streets, who were powerfully Krishna consciousness. The encouragement is there right in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says to Arjuna, who himself is not an ascetic, he's not a yogi, he's not a renunciate, he's a king. He has, in fact, more than one wife. He has a kingdom to rule over. He has diplomacy. He has expenditures and disbursements to be aware of. So he's very much involved in the material world. And yet he's a personal friend of Krishna. He's so Krishna consciousness in the midst of all his duties that he looks like Krishna. He has similar features as Krishna. He, just like if you spend a lot of time with someone, you start to look like them, think like them, and talk like them. So Arjuna is in some ways non-different. You can't think of Krishna without thinking of Arjuna, and you can't think of Arjuna without thinking of Krishna. And why is that? Here's the answer. Yata pravitir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tadam. Everybody has to do work in this material world, but God is all pervasive. There's no place in this world where you will not find God. So God is not just in church. He's not just locked up so you can visit him for 1 hour on Sundays, but he is yena sarvamidam tata. He's everywhere. That means God is in politics, God is in business, God is in technology, God is in science, God is in domestic affairs, God is in child raising, God is in poetry, God is in technology, God is in auto mechanics, God is in teaching, God is in being a businessman. There isn't any place where God isn't, and that means that there isn't anywhere or any situation that you cannot ignite yourself in God consciousness. And in fact, your occupation, those things which normally would have taken you away, like a riptide takes you away from solid ground in the ocean, those very things which would have normally taken you away and distracted you from God consciousness, shrakamratam abhyacha, by applying yourself to your duties, your kriya, your dharma, your karma, siddhim vinanti manava, you can achieve perfection by adding Krishna consciousness to the equation. Krishna's exact words here, by worship of the Lord, who is all-pervading and the source of all beings, a man can attain perfection through performance of his own work. So by work, one should have the satisfaction of the Lord in mind. And through one's work, one should gradually become more learned, so far as the personality of God is concerned. Through one's work, one should become more yogi, which doesn't mean breathing and contortions and postures necessarily. Those things aren't bad. But yoga means to yoke or to connect. So you can be a yogi in the factory as long as that occupational duty is helping you to connect with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But whatever it is that you do from a conditional point of view to maintain this body and these family members, it should be only as a concession to keeping body and soul together. It is said that one should never engage in material activities with the purpose of increasing and aggrandizing and accumulating material possessions, material responsibilities, and material burdens. There are 4 compartments involved in temporary material life. There are 4 goals that one has in maintaining this body and in supporting it, and as well as the byproducts of this body in terms of family, friends, and country. They're called Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Artha is sense gratification. Artha is money. Everybody needs money. And with money, you get food, you get shelter. There's a certain latitude for entertainment. You can travel to the temple on the holy days and on the weekends and sing and chant and dance and take prasadam. So you need money for that, for traveling, for sheltering, for feeding. And then you get artha, kama. Dharma means hopefully you earn your living righteously. You earn an honest dollar for an honest day's work. In other words, you're not sowing weeds in your garden. You're sowing good, wholesome seeds, which are going to produce a good fruit. And then finally, the purpose that you do all of this is not to entrench yourself, not to dig yourself a hole in the material world. That's why we're here in the first place. You have a material body, black, white, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, or Jew, and that material body is vulnerable to birth, death, old age, and disease. We're going around with masks now as an indication of how vulnerable we are. You can get sick, you can die just from standing in front of someone and talking to them for 5 minutes. That's how precarious, that's how vulnerable this material body is. So considering the fallibility, the vulnerability of this body, which lasts, if we're lucky in this age, 60 or 70 years, why would you engage in work for the purpose of increasing your attachment in the material world and accumulating material things, which are all destined to be destroyed in the course of time? Why would you do that? That's not the reason why we do righteous activities. That's not the reason why we do yoga. That's not the reason why we go to work. That's not the reason why we go to church. The reason is to get free from material entanglement. In the course of writing the Vedas, the author Vasudeva covered very extensively how to get prosperous from a material point of view, how to enjoy or to satisfy your senses while you're in the embodied condition, how to do all that in such a way as to accumulate good results, good karma in your future lives, a higher standard of living. And also he discussed salvationism or moksha, or ultimate liberation. And yet after having compiled all the Vedic literatures, Vasudeva was still despondent. He couldn't understand. He covered the 4 major areas of concern for embodied fallen living beings in this material world. And so he asked the question to his guru, Narada Muni, why am I still not satisfied? And here's the answer, part of the answer that Narada Muni gave him in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 5th chapter, 15th verse. Jugupsidam dharma kritena shashita, shavava raktasa mahanvidaram kam, yadvakyato dharmi titarastira, namanyate tasha nivaranam janaham. Narada Muni's answer is, why do the souls come here into this material world in the first place? The kingdom of God is much more of a beautiful, trouble-free, worry-free environment. But why is it that living entities came here in the first place? This is the perennial question. And it is because of a desire to enjoy matter apart from God. Therefore, Narada Muni says to Vasudeva, the people are already here because of a proclivity to try to lord it over and enjoy and take proprietorship over the material energy of the Lord. Now, in laying it all out in terms of economic development, sense gratification, righteous activity, and liberation, you have encouraged them. Basically, you've added fuel to the fire in the name of religion. So people are going to think after reading the Vedas that the purpose of religion is to get more money, to get more sense gratification, to do it righteously, and ultimately to burn out and get liberation. Narada Muni says that's not the purpose of religion, and therefore, in that sense, what you've done to date is condemned. Because people are guided by your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions. They'll be interested in all the things and all the benefits and all the fruits they can get from religion, and not interested in paring down, in becoming detached, in throwing things out in the interest of ultimate liberation. The fact is that out of all the 8,400,000 species of life which are spread throughout all the planets in the universe, the human form of life is the sole and unique opportunity to get out of the cycle of birth, death, and disease and old age. Therefore, the sole occupation, the sole concern of someone who has a human body should be to reestablish their lost relationship with God. In that condition, one should never be encouraged, especially by such a great author and sage and Muni as Vasudeva, in making plans for sense enjoyment in the name of religious functions. Such diversion of human energy results, Prabhupada says, in a misguided civilization. The only reason one should engage in work, the only reason one should diligently and dutifully execute one's duties in this embodied condition of life is how to get ultimate liberation, how to reestablish our connection with the absolute truth. It should never be directed towards increasing sense gratification. Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, 10th verse. I love this term, jivasya tatpa jignasya. Jivasya means maintaining this body. What is the purpose of maintaining this body? In order to indulge the mouth with tastes, in order to cram the nose, in order to overstimulate the eyes and ears with beautiful sights and sounds? No, that just gives you a headache. It just makes you prematurely sick and run down. One should engage in activities of maintaining the body only to keep one's strength up for jignasya tapajigna, for inquiry into the absolute truth. That's the only prerogative of the human form of life. Otherwise, the animals, they can do things better than we can. The bear can sleep for 6 months at a time. So what is the value of my having a nice water bed that costs $2,000? The dogs can have sex. They don't have to give flowers or sit through a board in order to get lucky. They just have it in the streets. They have no compunctions. There's no scruples about it. The birds can fly. They don't need a big 747 airplane with a huge factory and tons and tons of high-octane jet fuel. They don't have to worry about decontaminating the planes so that people in the packed, poorly ventilated space get coronavirus. They don't have any of those concerns. The birds just open their wings and take off and fly, you see? We've got subway, usually expensive, multi-billion-dollar subway, so you can go under the English Channel. But a little mole, a little gopher, a little marmot can just burrow underneath the ground, and they have elaborate tunnels where they live relatively comfortably. So why should we, having attained the unique, rare, and valuable human form, compete with the animals in flying, in burrowing, in sex life, in sleeping, in eating? Why should we waste the valuable human form of life competing with the animals in areas that the animals already surpass us? The only thing we can do better than the animals, the only thing we can do uniquely in the human form of life, is reestablish our lost connection with God. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prahlad Maharaj says, Komaro Machorat Pragna, Dharma Bhagavata, Durlabha Manusham, Tadapiya Dhruvamartyadam. The elements, the chemical, physical, anatomical composition of my body is the same as the body of a cat, same as the dog, same as the llama, same as the peacock, same as the cow. However, even though our physical elements are the same, only in the human form of life does one have the higher faculties, the intellect, to understand that one is not this body, that one is an eternal spirit soul, and as a spirit soul, I am part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sum total, the result of the conversation between Narada and Vasudeva, is that Narada Muni is chastising his disciple for having a compromising spirit. And he urges him now, after having compiled all the Vedic literatures and described the 4 compartments of material life, now to create his summum bonum, now to create his commentary on the Vedas in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad means beautiful, Bhagavatam means absolute truth. Narada Muni says, your opus is unfinished. You have your ultimate, most great work, the summum bonum, before you. You need to write the narration of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he performed them on this earth 5,300 years ago, and not allow any tinge or alloy of sense gratification, economic development, righteousness, or even liberation to end. Just make it purely to spread the glories of the Lord. And then your literary career will be perfect. It says, Bhavatana to prayam yasho bhagun yenaivashu natushita manya twad darshanam karam. You have neglected so far to actually broadcast Yasho Bhagavato Malam, the purified name, fame, qualities, and pastimes of Bhagavan, the possessor of 6 opulences. You have neglected to broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. We are all parts and parcels of the Lord. And so we cannot actually satisfy ourselves independent of God. Our satisfaction and the satisfaction of all living beings really comes through the root, by glorifying and honoring and serving the source, the root cause of everything. That will be our best satisfaction. That will be in the best interest of all other living beings. Narada Muni is administering to Vyasadeva the advice of the expert physician. That physician who compromises with the patient. Generally, the patient who's ill likes to go on eating the same foods that got them ill in the first place. So that physician that wants to be popular, that wants to make a lot of money, that doesn't have the highest concern and regard for his patients, will compromise with them. Say, yeah, you can take these pills and deal with the symptoms, and also at the same time go on eating the same foods that make you ill. But this is not the advice of a physician who has true concern for the patients. Even at the risk of not being popular, even at the risk of having less patients, the expert physician will tell the patient, don't eat the foods that made you sick. Don't just treat the symptoms of your disease by taking allopathic medicines, but eat wholesome, pure foods which will restore you back to a position of optimal, radiant health, which will integrate your body, mind, and soul. Sometimes the advice of the expert physician is hard to hear, it's unpalatable, but it is by following his advice that you'll enjoy radiant, wholesome health in the future. We have to be prepared to do that. Krishna says, don't compromise with religion, with economic development, with sense gratification. Don't do what you do with the idea of salvationism. If you put aside all of those pursuits which are based on this body and which give you temporary results, and surrender unto me, you'll not be the loser, but you'll be the gainer millions and millions of times over. Practically the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, if anybody knows. that the author saves his best advice for the end. Whatever he said before is just laying the groundwork for his final conclusive recommendation, which is going to come at the end. The most important thing that the author has to say is going to be at the end. So after describing all yoga, all dharma, all kriya, all jnana, all tapasya, after describing all the different areas of human activity, Krishna pinpoints the area of bhakti, LDS, loving devotional service, to the Supreme Lord Narayana, Vasudeva, or Krishna as the ultimate activity of the living being. And if one puts aside other duties and obligations in favor of surrendering to the lotus feet of Krishna, he will not be the loser but the gainer millions of times over. Sarva dharman parityaga mame kam saranam vraja aham tam sarve papabhya moksha ese ma suchaha. Summarizing the whole Bhagavad Gita, summarizing the entire 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, Krishna says that if you neglect other duties in favor of surrendering unto me, don't worry. I will protect you from any criticism, from any censorship on the part of society, from any potential sinful reactions. I will take you personally under my sheltering wings, and I will remove the negative consequences of any non-devotional activities. So, and even if one is not on the highest level of spiritual life, even if one approaches the Lord not as a great yogi, not as a great transcendentalist, not as a great philosopher, but as a street sweeper, as a factory worker, one is not at a loss at all. One is personally supervised, personally guided from within by the Supreme Lord by virtue of one's surrender. And it says that even if you are imperfect, even if you are incomplete in the practice of devotional service, what is the loss? Even if you are complete and perfect in material pursuits, what is the gain if without a scintilla of devotional service? We talked in a recent class about how even someone who's done a little bit of devotional service, just put their big toe in the water, the difference between them and one who never performs devotional service, the difference between a sweet streeper who has a few times chanted Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and the Prime Minister who's never chanted Hare Krishna, who's never exhibited any interest in devotional service. The difference between them is that once having taken a few steps on the path of devotional service, Krishna will forcibly drag them home back to Godhead. He will forcibly never ever give up until he's got them in his all-embracing, sheltering arms. And from the point of view of the devotee, once having tasted the nectar of serving Krishna, you can give it up, but you can never forget it. One hankers ever afterwards to taste that honey, that nectar, and one can never forget it. Atavasya param bhojo makarandadhyam kimanyura sadapayo ayusho yada sadbayaham. The devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? One can never forget that taste of prasadam, of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And one who has progressed even 2 or 3% in devotional service is no longer an orphan. The difference between someone who's done a little devotional but desisted, stepped back and retreated, and one who has never done any devotional service is that the former is now like the son of the king, and the latter is still an orphan on your own out here in the material world, acting whimsically, capriciously for one's own temporary self-improvement. So one is an orphan. Krishna steps back. You want to do it? Okay. Krishna steps back. You're on your own. I do not assume the responsibility for anyone's pious or impious activities. But having done even a little devotional service is so powerful that you're no longer an orphan. You're no longer on your own. Krishna's there with you. The difference between an orphan wandering alone across the face of the earth and a son of a king wandering across the face of the earth is that the orphan has no one to check on them, no one to look over them, no one to protect them. They are truly on their own. They're truly adrift. But even though another young person may be wandering here and there and to superficial appearances seem just like the orphan, there's a world of difference. The son of a rich man may be wandering here and there. He may even have forgotten who his father is and what exalted circumstances he comes from, but the father never forgets. And the father always has, no matter where his son is wandering, in a state of amnesia or forgetfulness, the father's always got people checking on him, looking in on him, watching him, though he may not be aware of it, protecting him, though he may not be aware of it. The devotional service is so powerful that even done partially and imperfectly, one ends up with the goal of Narayana, Vasudeva, Krishna, back to home, back to Caru, where life is full of bliss, knowledge, and eternal. And material life is so defective that unless you do it 100%, the whole endeavor is useless. Neither does the result carry over from one life to another time, nor is anything permanent. It is all like a pass of time. So our encouragement always, day after day, Motivational Monday, Transcendental Tuesday, Wisdom Wednesday, you'll find a certain consistency in our message. And that is Dharma, Vasudeva para yoga, Vasudeva para tapa, Vasudeva para kriya, Vasudeva gyanam. Always and in everything, whether you're a philosopher or a yogi, whether you're an ascetic, whether you're a school teacher, whether you're a businessman, whether you're a housewife, whether you're a king, or whether you're a street sweeper, make your life make your life successful by, in all of that, aiming as your first and foremost duty to always please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You guys are really making it happen here. Wow. So inspired by all what I call the fireworks going off. Thomas, Vaibhavi, Manasaganga, Journey, thank you, Journey, drops in. Rakesh, Haribo Rakesh, Varsana, Anjali. I'll look forward to seeing your comments. Mona Gupta, thanks for stopping in. Do ask your comments, any questions that you have. Vipin Bharadwaj, thank you. Bhaktin Caprice, Prashant, Tarlak Varma, Bhakti Cody. Thank you all. I don't even have time to list everyone. But by all means, thank you so much for your likes. Thank you for your stars. Thank you for inspiration. Thank you for your association. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here on Transcendental Tuesday. Go ahead and write your comments. It'll take me a little time, but within half an hour or so, I'll be glad to answer your questions and get back to you. In the meantime, till we meet 24 hours from now for Wisdom Wednesday, don't forget to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.